I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I had a typical suburban life with my wife, Lisa, and our son, Jake. We lived in a neat little house on Maple Street, complete with a backyard where Jake played soccer with his friends. Lisa worked part-time as a graphic designer, while I put in hours at a tech firm. On the surface, it all seemed fine, even ideal. But looking back, there were signs, little cracks in our perfect facade. Initially, I chalked it up to the usual stressors of life. Lisa had been acting a bit distant. She was often on her phone, texting late into the night, and I could sense a change in her demeanor. Once playful and affectionate, she had become irritable and critical, especially when I tried to engage with her. I thought it was just typical midlife stuff, work stress, the grind of parenting. I never imagined it could be something more sinister. The first real alarm bell rang during a weekend in early spring. I had planned a family outing, hoping to reconnect with Lisa and Jake, but Lisa casually suggested she needed to stay home to work on a project. She had been so busy lately, she said, with this new tutor for Jake. It was the first time I had heard about this tutor, a guy named Derek who was supposedly helping Jake with math. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed Lisa was being responsible, trying to balance work and parenting. But then there was that one Tuesday evening. Jake was at a friend's house and I returned home early from work. As I walked in, I noticed Lisa's car was parked in the driveway. I thought it strange since she had told me she was meeting a client. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but as I walked through the house, I heard laughter and low voices coming from the study. I peeked through the half-open door and froze. There was Lisa, sitting on the desk, her body leaning into Derek, who was way too close for comfort. My heart raced as I took in the scene. They didn't notice me at first, but when I cleared my throat, Lisa's expression changed from surprise to sheer panic. Derek immediately stood up, adjusting his shirt, looking guilty and too damn comfortable in my home. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt sick to my stomach, angry and utterly betrayed. Lisa's eyes darted between Derek and me, and I could see the gears turning in her head as she processed the situation. What's going on here? My voice was steadier than I felt. Jake needed help with his math and I was just, Derek started, but I cut him off. Get the hell out, I snapped. I didn't want to hear his pathetic excuses. He glanced at Lisa, seeking her approval, but there was nothing but panic in her eyes. He quickly gathered his things and left, the door slamming behind him, echoing like a final punctuation mark on everything we had built together. When I turned back to Lisa, she was already crying, tears of guilt, shame, or maybe fear of being caught. I didn't care. I wanted answers. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice low and cold. It's not what you think. She gasped, but I could see the truth in her eyes. We were just studying, I swear, it's innocent. Don't lie to me, Lisa, I shouted, the anger bubbling over. I saw you. You were practically in his lap. The confrontation spiraled into a whirlwind of accusations and defenses. She tried to explain herself, but I couldn't listen. It all felt like a blur. The denials, the tears, the anger boiling in my chest. The emotional impact of what I had just discovered was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly lost. I never imagined I would be standing there, questioning the very foundation of my life, my marriage. In that chaotic moment, I realized I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to make a decision, not just for myself, but for Jake too. I needed to consider my next steps carefully, knowing that every choice I made would impact not just my life, but the lives of everyone involved. This was going to change everything. I took a deep breath, trying to compose my thoughts. What would happen next? How would I handle this? The need for revenge began to simmer beneath my shock and anger. As I looked at Lisa, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was just getting started. After that explosive confrontation, things only got worse. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. Each time I looked at Lisa, all I could see were the lies and betrayal. The woman I had loved for over a decade, the mother of my child, had shattered my trust in a matter of moments. I felt a strange mix of anger and sorrow, like a storm brewing inside me, and I knew I needed to channel that energy into something concrete. The next few days were a blur of silent dinners and forced conversations. Lisa tried to explain, but her words felt hollow and insincere. She claimed it was a one-time mistake and swore it would never happen again. But I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. I was on a tightrope, balancing between the urge to scream at her and the desperate need to process what we had become, a mere shadow of the couple we once were. I spent more nights than I'd like to admit, lying awake, ruminating over every detail of what I had witnessed. I thought about Derek, the tutor. A younger guy, probably in his late 20s, and here he was, swooping in when I was busy trying to provide for my family. The image of him leaning over Lisa, whispering sweet nothings, I could almost hear their laughter echoing in my mind. It drove me mad. I decided to do some digging. I wanted to know if this affair was truly a fleeting moment or something more deeply rooted. I started with Derek. I found out where he worked and what his past looked like. I learned he was a fresh-eyed college graduate, eager to impress and desperate to make a name for himself. The more I uncovered, the more my blood boiled. I began to formulate a plan, a way to ensure that this man wouldn't just walk away unscathed. Lisa had betrayed me, but Derek was the one who had taken advantage of my trust. I knew I had to act carefully. I needed to expose him in a way that would have real consequences. I wanted to destroy his future as he had so callously destroyed mine. The following week, I arranged to confront Derek directly. I knew he tutored another student in the area, and it would be easy to find him. I waited until a rainy afternoon when I knew he would be at the local coffee shop preparing for lessons. As I walked in, I spotted him hunched over a pile of books, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. "Derek," I called out, my voice low and dangerous. He looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Mr. Thompson," I cut the pleasantries. "We need to talk," I interrupted, barely able to keep my anger in check. I wanted everyone in the cafe to hear me, but I managed to keep my voice steady. I wanted him to feel the weight of the situation. "What's this about?" he asked, his bravado fading as uncertainty washed over him. "I know about you and Lisa," I said, leaning in close, keeping my voice low yet piercing. "You think you can just waltz into my house and ruin my family." He opened his mouth, probably to deny or defend himself, but I didn't give him the chance. "Here, what's going to happen. I want you to quit your tutoring job immediately. I'm going to make sure you're banned from teaching, and I will make sure the whole district knows what kind of person you are." Shock flickered across his face, but I could see the gears turning in his mind. "You can't do that," he protested weakly. "This is just what? Just an innocent interaction." I shot back, my voice rising. "You took advantage of my wife and now you'll pay the price." I could see fear creeping into his eyes. He stammered for words, but I could tell he realized the gravity of the situation. I had every intention of making this happen. I had connections and I was determined to use them. I left the cafe feeling exhilarated and guilty all at once. The revenge I was seeking felt like a double-edged sword, cutting both ways. I was ensuring Derek faced consequences while also wrestling with the idea of what this meant for my own future and my family's stability. I still hadn't confronted Lisa about my meeting with Derek. I wanted her to stew a bit longer, to fully grasp the impact of her actions. Back at home, I found her in the living room, scrolling on her phone, looking far too comfortable. I thought about how she had betrayed the sanctity of our marriage. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done as much as I did. "Lisa," I called, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She looked up, her face a mask of uncertainty. "What now?" "I talked to Derek. He's quitting and I'm making sure he's banned from teaching," I stated, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes widened, disbelief and anger flashing across her face. "You can't do that. That's not fair." "And what's fair about you cheating on me?" I shot back. "You've ruined us, Lisa. Don't you get that?" Tears brimmed in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen," I echoed, almost incredulous. "You meant it when you leaned into him, when you laughed together, when you let him into our home. Don't try to sugarcoat this." She opened her mouth to retort, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I'm done listening to your excuses. This is happening, Lisa. You brought this on yourself." The emotional toll of my actions weighed heavily on me, but I felt more resolute than ever. I was determined to see this through. I might have been hurt, but I would not be the victim. I was reclaiming my power, and this was just the beginning. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Lisa became increasingly desperate to salvage what was left of our marriage. She tried to engage me in conversations about reconciliation, but every time she mentioned working through this, it only reignited my anger. How could she even think there was something left to save? The betrayal hung in the air like a dense fog, suffocating any flicker of affection I might have felt for her. I was relentless in my pursuit of revenge against Derek. I documented every interaction Lisa had with him, saving messages and emails that might serve as proof of their affair. I could see that Lisa was becoming anxious, realizing that I was serious about my plans. I wanted her to feel the repercussions of her choices, and I was ready to turn her world upside down. At night, while she slept, I pored over information about the school district. I sought out contacts who could help me make my case against Derek. I wasn't just a husband wronged. I was a father protecting my son's future. I wanted to ensure that no other family would have to go through the pain Lisa and I had inflicted upon each other. Eventually, I gathered enough evidence and decided it was time to make my move. I reached out to a friend who worked at the school district's administration office. I explained the situation, carefully outlining the affair, and how Lisa's indiscretions were not just a personal matter, but a threat to the integrity of the educational environment. My friend was sympathetic but also cautious. This was a serious accusation, and I needed to be careful how I presented my case. With my friend's help, I arranged for a meeting with the school superintendent. I spent the night before rehearsing what I would say, my anger bubbling just beneath the surface. I needed to remain composed. I had to appear rational and articulate. The following morning, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement as I walked into the district office. Sitting across from the superintendent, I laid out my case. I spoke about the affair, how Derek had crossed boundaries that no teacher should ever dare to cross. I presented evidence, texts, emails, and even the timeline of the affair. As I talked, I could see the superintendent's gaze intensifying, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "This is a serious matter," he finally said, his voice grave. "We take allegations like this very seriously, especially involving students and their families." I appreciated his seriousness, but my heart raced as I feared he might dismiss my claims. I don't want to ruin Derek's life. I just want to ensure he doesn't have the opportunity to hurt anyone else the way he hurt my family. I added, my voice steady. My determination rang clear, and I felt a small sense of vindication as I left the office. The next few days were torturous. I waited, pacing like a caged animal for a response. Meanwhile, Lisa tried her hardest to be the perfect wife, cooking meals, running errands, and even trying to initiate conversations about a family vacation. But I wasn't biting. I was focused on the fallout from my meeting. My phone buzzed one afternoon while I was at work. It was a text from my friend. "Derek has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. They're taking this seriously." I felt a rush of satisfaction wash over me. My plan was working and I was gaining ground in this battle. When I got home that evening, I found Lisa waiting for me, her face pale. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I heard from someone at the school that Derek is being investigated. Did you have something to do with this?" I had anticipated this moment. "You could say that." I went to the school board and told them everything, I replied, watching the color drain from her face. "They're taking it seriously, Lisa. He might lose his teaching license." "You can't do this," she shouted, her voice rising in panic. "He's just a tutor. It was a mistake and you're ruining his life over it." I stepped closer, my anger bubbling back to the surface. "What about my life, Lisa? What about the life you decided to destroy? You broke our vows and betrayed me. You think I'm just going to sit back and let it happen without consequence? I thought we could work it out," she pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you. I love you. I made a mistake." "No, Lisa, you made a choice," I corrected her, my voice low and firm. "And now you're going to face the consequences. You don't get to decide what happens next. You lost that right the moment you decided to betray our family." I watched as she crumpled, sinking into the couch, her sobs echoing throughout the room. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but another part felt empowered. This was my moment. I was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my son's future. I don't know how we can move forward from this, I said, taking a step back, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. Maybe we need to think about what this means for us. Please just give me a chance. I'll do anything, she begged, desperation etched on her face. Anything, I echoed, raising an eyebrow. What's that worth to you, Lisa? You've already shown me where your loyalties lie. The emotional impact of our confrontation was heavy, and I could see Lisa's realization settling in. She understood that I was serious about what I had done. I was no longer the complacent husband who would forgive and forget. I was a husband scorned, and I was determined to see this through to the end. As I left the room, I felt a mixture of triumph and sorrow. I was ready to face whatever came next, fully aware that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But I wasn't backing down. I had made my decision, and I would see it through, no matter the cost. The days turned into weeks, and the tension in our home was palpable. The atmosphere felt thick with unresolved conflict and strained emotions. Lisa continued to plead her case, trying to convince me that she was committed to repairing our marriage. But every time she mentioned trying to move on, I felt a wave of resentment wash over me. How could we move on when she had shattered our foundation? Meanwhile, the investigation into Derek's actions progressed slowly. Lisa was not the only one affected. The affair had sent ripples throughout the local community. Parents began whispering, and rumors circulated about Derek's conduct. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction every time I heard someone mention the situation. I had taken a stand, and it felt good to know that I was not alone in this battle. As for Lisa, she became increasingly desperate. She started making grand gestures, cooking elaborate dinners, planning romantic getaways, and even volunteering for school activities to show her commitment to our family. But I saw through the facade. It all felt like a performance, a desperate attempt to rewrite the narrative and make everything okay again. One evening, after yet another strained dinner, I found myself staring out the window, lost in thought. I wanted to protect Jake from the fallout of this mess, but I also knew I couldn't shield him from the truth forever. With Derek on administrative leave and the investigation lingering, I had to consider how this would affect our family dynamics. As if on cue, Jake walked into the living room, his innocent face lighting up the room. "Hey, Dad, can we play some soccer outside?" he asked, his excitement palpable. I smiled weakly, the warmth of his innocence cutting through the weight of my anger. "Sure, buddy, just give me a minute." As we played outside, kicking the ball back and forth, sense of normalcy returned for a brief moment. I relished in Jake's laughter, the way he chased the ball with pure joy. It was a reminder that despite everything, I still had a family worth fighting for. But as I looked at him, I felt the pang of guilt resurface. I was determined to protect him, but at what cost? Later that week, I received a call from my friend at the school district. "They've decided to take further action against Derek," she informed me. "There's enough evidence to warrant a formal hearing. They're considering revoking his teaching license." My heart raced with a mix of triumph and dread. I had wanted this, had worked tirelessly to ensure that Derek faced consequences. But now that it was happening, I was struck by the reality of my actions. I was not just ruining his professional life. I was dismantling the future he had worked hard to build. I decided to keep the news from Lisa for the time being. I wanted to take a moment to process my emotions before discussing it with her. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I was turning into the very person I despised, someone who sought revenge at all costs, blinded by anger. When I finally confronted Lisa about the upcoming hearing, I was met with an unexpected reaction. "You can't do this. He deserves a chance," she exclaimed, her voice rising with panic. "You're ruining him." I looked at her incredulously. "You're defending him now after everything he did to us." "It was my fault. I made a terrible mistake, but you can't just ruin his life because of it," she cried, her face flushed with emotion. "Do you even hear yourself, Lisa? He took advantage of your weakness, and you think he should just get away with it. Why are you more concerned about him than our family?" "I'm not. I just don't want to see anyone's life destroyed, no matter how bad they messed up. She shot back, tears streaming down her face. I clenched my fists, battling the conflicting emotions swirling inside me. What about my life, Lisa? What about our son? Derek's actions put our family at risk. He deserves to face the consequences. The conversation spiraled into a full-blown argument, and for the first time I saw the cracks in Lisa's facade, a hint of realization that she couldn't evade the reality of her choices. But even in her despair, she couldn't fully accept that her actions had consequences beyond just our relationship. By the time we had both calmed down, I realized that the emotional toll of this situation was wearing on me. I was caught between a need for revenge and the responsibility of being a father. I had begun this journey to protect Jake, but somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of the person I wanted to be. In the days that followed, I decided to take a step back. I reached out to a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and infidelity. I needed to sort through my feelings and understand what I truly wanted. I was tired of living in this tumultuous state of anger and resentment. I wanted to find a way to navigate this situation that would ultimately benefit Jake and allow me to reclaim my sense of self. During my first session, I shared my story, how I had been hurt, the steps I had taken to confront Derek, and my ongoing struggle with anger towards Lisa. Therapist listened intently, offering insights into the psychological impact of betrayal and how it affects family structures. Revenge often feels satisfying in the moment, but it can lead to further pain in the long run, she suggested gently. You have to ask yourself what you truly want for your life and for Jake's future. Those words resonated deeply with me. I didn't just want to be the man who sought vengeance. I wanted to be a father who could provide a safe and nurturing environment for my son. I had to find a way to navigate this situation that didn't compromise my integrity or my role as a dad. As I left the session, a sense of clarity washed over me. I realized that while I still wanted Derek to be held accountable, my focus needed to shift from revenge to healing, for both myself and for my family. It was time to confront the emotional aftermath head-on and find a path forward, one that would allow me to emerge from this storm stronger and more resilient. I returned home that evening, determined to have an honest conversation with Lisa. It was time to lay everything on the table, to speak openly about our pain and our hopes for the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary if we wanted to figure out what came next. That evening, as I sat across from Lisa, I felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. The air in the room was thick with unspoken words, and I knew we were at a crossroads. It was time to address not just the affair but everything it had unraveled in our lives. The therapist had encouraged me to express my feelings openly, and I was determined to do just that. Lisa, we need to have a serious conversation, I began, trying to keep my tone steady. About everything that's happened, the affair, our marriage, and where we go from here. She looked at me, her eyes a mixture of fear and hope. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. I'll do anything, I swear. I took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about what you did, about how it's affected me and how it's affected Jake. I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I need to know if you're genuinely committed to repairing this or if you're only saying what you think I want to hear. I am committed. I love you and I made a terrible mistake. I never wanted to hurt you, Jason. She pleaded, her voice trembling. Hurt me. You shattered my trust. You risked everything we built together for some fleeting thrill. I felt my anger rising again, but I forced myself to remain calm. You've spent so much time trying to convince me of your love, but love doesn't betray like that, Lisa. I can't forget what you did. I know it was wrong, but I want to work on this. I want to prove it to you, she said, desperation lacing her words. Prove it? How do you plan to do that? I asked sharply. How can I possibly believe you after everything? I'll go to therapy too. I'll do whatever it takes, she offered, her eyes wide with desperation. As I listened to her, I felt a glimmer of something. Was it hope? Or was it just the remnants of the love I had for her? I think therapy could help us both, I admitted cautiously. But I need you to understand that this won't be easy. We have a long road ahead if we're going to rebuild. Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. I don't want to lose you. Losing me isn't the only consequence of your actions, I said, wrestling with the gravity of the situation. What you did has repercussions beyond just us. It affected Derek's career, our son's life, and our entire family. I'm still pursuing the investigation into Derek, and I can't just let it go. He needs to face consequences. I understand, she sighed, looking defeated. But please don't make it about revenge. I don't want to lose you over this. I want to move forward, not destroy someone else's life. Her words hit me hard, and I realized how conflicted I still was. My drive for revenge had overshadowed my responsibility as a husband and father. I get that, Lisa. I do. But Derek's actions can't just be swept under the rug. I want him to understand the impact of what he did. But taking everything away from him, whoa. Fix what's broken between us, she argued, her voice rising slightly. It won't change what happened. It won't bring back the trust. I leaned back, processing her words. You're right. I don't want to be consumed by anger. I'm tired of feeling this way. There was a moment of silence as the weight of the conversation settled between us. I knew that part of the healing process involved letting go of the need for vengeance. I want to protect Jake, Lisa. I don't want him to grow up seeing this bitterness between us. I continued, feeling a new resolve. But I also want to protect myself. I need to feel secure in my relationship, and you need to understand how serious this is. I will do anything to show you I'm committed to us, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I studied her face, searching for sincerity, and after a long pause I said, okay, let's start fresh. But it's going to take time and we'll need help. I'm willing to try, but you need to be patient with me. I will, she exclaimed, hope igniting in her eyes. Thank you for giving me a chance. In that moment, I felt a flicker of something I thought I had lost, an inkling of hope for our future. But I knew we had a long journey ahead. As we discussed next steps, I realized that the healing process would require effort from both of us. It wouldn't be easy, and I was still grappling with my feelings about Derek's consequences. The next day, I decided to follow up with my friend at the school district. I needed to understand the outcome of the investigation and what actions were being taken against Derek. I wasn't entirely ready to abandon my pursuit of justice, but I also wanted to ensure that I wasn't blinded by revenge. My friend informed me that a hearing had been scheduled to discuss Derek's future with the school district. You know, Jason, you might want to think about whether or not you want to be a part of this, she advised carefully. It could get messy, especially if you bring all of this personal animosity into it. I appreciated her advice and took it to heart. If I wanted to move forward with Lisa, I needed to find a way to balance my anger with the desire for resolution. I decided to attend the hearing, not to seek revenge, but to ensure that Derek faced appropriate consequences for his actions without losing sight of the bigger picture. As the hearing date approached, Lisa and I continued to work through our issues in therapy. It wasn't easy, and there were moments where anger and resentment threatened to resurface. But with each session, we began to communicate better, peeling back the layers of hurt and betrayal. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I walked into the conference room feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. I wanted to present my case clearly, not out of revenge, but as a father who had been deeply affected by Derek's actions. As I took my seat, I prepared myself for the confrontation ahead. Derek's presence in the room was unsettling, but I focused on my goal. I was there to speak for my family, for Jake, and for myself. I was ready to confront the reality of the situation and find a way to resolve it with integrity. Little did I know, that day would set in motion events that would redefine not only my relationship with Lisa but my understanding of forgiveness, healing, and what it truly meant to move forward. I was ready to step into the light of a new chapter, leaving behind the shadows of the past. As I sat in the conference room, the tension was palpable. The walls seemed to close in on me, and I could feel my heart pound in my chest. Derek sat on the other side of the table, his demeanor a mix of defiance and uncertainty. He looked surprisingly composed, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. It was a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. The hearing began with the superintendent addressing the room, outlining the concerns about Derek's conduct and the investigation that had taken place. As I listened, I steeled myself for my turn to speak. I knew I had to convey the emotional impact the affair had on my family, especially on Jake. When it was my time to take the stand, I stood up, took a deep breath, and began. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jason Thompson, and I am the father of a student who was affected by this situation. My voice was steady, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I want to emphasize that this isn't just about punitive measures against Derek. It's about safeguarding our children and ensuring that trust is upheld within the educational system. As a father, I can tell you that discovering my wife's affair with Derek was one of the most painful experiences of my life. My family has been shattered, and my son is caught in the crossfire of this betrayal. I could see the room's attention shifting towards me, the gravity of my words resonating with the panel members. Derek's actions were not just a mistake, they were a breach of trust that has consequences that ripple far beyond this hearing. My son deserves a safe environment to learn and grow, free from the influence of someone who has displayed such poor judgment. As I spoke, I felt the anger within me transform into something more constructive, a desire for change rather than revenge. I'm not here to ruin Derek's life. I want him to understand the gravity of his actions and to think critically about the power dynamics between a teacher and a student. This isn't just about his career, it's about accountability, responsibility, and the trust that parents place in educators. After I finished speaking, I sat back down, my heart racing. I felt vulnerable but empowered at the same time. I had stood up for my family, for my son, and for what I believed was right. After several more testimonies from other parents and teachers, the panel deliberated before making their decision. When they returned, the superintendent addressed Derek directly. Given the evidence presented and the testimony we've heard today, we believe it is in the best interest of the students and the community that we take appropriate action. Derek, you will be placed on a probationary period, and further monitoring will be established for your conduct moving forward. Any further infractions will lead to termination of your teaching license. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Derek would face consequences, but I also knew it was a chance for him to reflect and grow. I hoped he would take this opportunity to understand the weight of his actions. After the hearing, I stepped outside into the cool air, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I had faced my demons and stood up for my family. Lisa was waiting for me, her eyes filled with uncertainty and hope. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think it went well. They're holding him accountable," I replied, feeling a sense of closure. "But that's only part of this journey. We have a lot of work to do, Lisa." "I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "I want to fix this," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. As we drove home, I reflected on the past few months. I had been consumed by anger and pain, but through the process, I had also learned a lot about myself. I realized that while revenge may have felt satisfying at first, it was the path to healing and forgiveness that would ultimately lead me to peace. We began attending therapy together, slowly working through the remnants of betrayal. It wasn't a quick fix, and there were still tough conversations ahead, but I could see the potential for growth in our relationship. We talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. One evening, as we sat together, I shared my thoughts. "I don't want to live in the past anymore. I want to focus on us, on our family. I want Jake to see that we can overcome this as a team." Lisa nodded, her expression earnest. "I want that too. I want to show Jake that love can endure, even in the most difficult times." As we continued to navigate our healing process, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I learned that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant acknowledging the pain while choosing to move forward. It meant understanding that both of us had work to do to rebuild trust. Over time, our family began to heal. We found new ways to connect, laugh, and support each other. I watched as Lisa took an active role in Jake's life, committed to being a better partner and mother. We even began to suggest family outings, rediscovering the joy of spending time together. The incident with Derek faded into the background, but it remained a reminder of the importance of communication and trust. I had learned that while life can throw unexpected challenges our way, it's how we respond to those challenges that defines us. In the end, I realized that my desire for revenge had transformed into a commitment to growth and healing. I had faced my fears, stood up for my family, and emerged not just as a husband, but as a father and a man willing to fight for what truly mattered. Life was far from perfect, but we were on the right path. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. Together, we were ready to face whatever came next.